What's up, YouTube? This is 82 and 0. Welcome back. I apologize for the absence. Unfortunately, I have bad news. Bill Walton has passed away after a private battle with cancer. Rest in peace, Bill Walton, one of the all-time great players, Hall of Fame center. So, I kind of wanted to make another video about it. I know I've made one in the past, and I just want to get back into it for anybody who's not really sure about his life. Maybe they just heard about him now. This is the first time and they want to learn about him. But also, this is just to celebrate his life and his accomplishments. So, Bill Walton was born on November 5th, 1952, in La Mesa, California. Um, and he grew up in La Mesa. He'd go to Helix High School in La Mesa, played high school basketball with his brother, Bruce. And he had a very great high school career. Um, had players been drafted out of high school back then, he no doubt would have been drafted out of high school. He did struggle academically at first, but he overcame all of his obstacles academically and on the basketball court. He led Helix to 49 consecutive victories in two varsity seasons. Helix won the California Federation Championship in 69 and 70, finishing with a 29 and 2 record in 68-69 and a 33 and 0 record in 69-70. He graduated standing at 6 foot 11, and I would say from everything I've read about Bill Walton, he had three interests: music, basketball, and politics. And he would get a lot of his political influence from his father. His father was a very political man. He instilled in Bill from an early age social consciousness. His mother was a librarian, and Bill Walton was actually able to play the saxophone, the flute, the tuba, the drums. And fact that I'm sure a lot of people know, but maybe people who didn't know about his life probably don't know this. Bill Walton was big Grateful Dead fan. Um, one of his nicknames in his playing career was the Grateful Red, because it's red hair. But anyways, he would commit to UCLA. And UCLA, prior to joining the varsity team, Walton was averaging 18 points per game on 68.6 field goal efficiency, and the varsity UCLA team, led by seniors Sidney Wick, Curtis Rowe, and Steve Patterson, defeated Villanueva in the 1971 championship game for UCLA's fifth consecutive NCAA title. That was just in his freshman year. His sophomore season, the 1971-72 UCLA basketball team had a record of 30 and 0, winning its games with an average margin of 30 points, averaging 94.6 points to opponents' 64.3. And this is why a lot of people put Bill Walton in the conversation of greatest collegiate players of all time. Obviously, Kareem's in that conversation. You could put Jordan in there, but Walton was dominant. There, there's not a lot of players that dominated the way he did, and a lot of times people, when they look at Bill Walton's stats and accolades, maybe his NBA stats, they think, oh, he wasn't that dominant. Come on, he didn't play that much. But it's a basketball Hall of Fame, right? And his collegiate career, no doubt, is definitely what built his resume. I'm not saying he wasn't a great NBA player. I'm not saying that at all. But his collegiate career definitely solidifies him as a Hall of Famer. Now, his junior season, UCLA again finished 30 and 0 overall and 14 and 0 in the Pac 8 conference in the 72-73 season. The UCLA Bruins averaged winning by over 20 points, and they were averaging 81.3 points per game compared to their opponent's 60.1. So he won a NCAA title in the Pac 8, 72 and 73. and his teams were some of the greatest collegiate teams ever assembled. He finished his UCLA career averaging 20.3 points per game, 15.7 rebounds per game, and 5.5 assists per game on an insane 65% shooting. And the reason why I put emphasis on his assist numbers is I consider him in the conversation of the greatest passing big men in NBA history. Um, you know how Nikola Jokic plays, where he stands in the post and he gets a lot of backdoor cut passes. He can see people um in angles that no other human being would be able to see. Like he's got eyes on the back of his head. And Bill Walton was a lot like that. Uh, Maybe a lot of young people watching this video don't know how good he was. He was an all-time great defensive player, great rebounder. All right, he had an act for catching the ball. He wasn't the most skilled offensively, but he was getting comparisons to Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain in college, in high school even. And you got to understand the way NBA teams were built back then, they built around a center. They weren't building teams around guards. It wasn't really until Jordan was winning his championships that the NBA kind of shifted towards you draft a guard or you can draft a guard over a center. In those days, you built around a Hall of Fame center, at least a decent center, like an perennial all star center to win a championship. And Bill Walton, his senior season at UCLA, in Walton's senior year, UCLA's 88 game win streak ended with a 71 to 70 loss at Notre Dame on January 19th, 1974. Walton played wearing a back brace, and he had suffered a major back injury in a fall against Washington State the week before. And we all know about about Walton's injury trouble, right? In high school and in college, for the most part, he was healthy up until the end there. Uh, I'll get into it in a minute. His injuries. So he missed 3 games, but he made 12 of the first 13 shots, and the Bruins led Notre Dame by 17 points at halftime. UCLA was leading 70 to 59 with 3.5 minutes remaining. However, they were outscored 12-0, missing 6 consecutive shots with 4 turnovers, and was his belief Wooden did not call timeout late in game and stuck with this strategy. The Irish made 6 shots in a row, winning on the White Clay's shot with 29 seconds left, as Notre Dame prevailed 71 to 70. Walton, who missed a 12-foot shot off the inbound pass to win the game as time expired, finished with 24 points and 9 rebounds. He said his efforts that day he said about his efforts that day, a complete failure on all levels, particularly as a human being, a disgrace to the game of basketball, a disgrace to the sport. A week later, the Bruins beat the Fighting Irish 94 to 75 at home. Later in the season, UCLA dropped consecutive games in consecutive days at Oregon and Oregon State, nicknamed the Lost Weekend. There were so many problems, Walton said, of the losses and the injuries. He missed games with a bad back, team chemistry. It was just a nightmare. So to sum it up, his senior year, UCLA finished 26-4, still a great record, but compared to his other seasons in college, it doesn't hold up. Um, but anyways, I won't talk too much about his collegiate career. He finished with two titles, finished with amazing stats, and there was a new team that was formed in the NBA, the Portland Trailblazers. So the Portland Trailblazers' first season was in 70-71, and Bill Walton would be drafted in 1973 going to the NBA. I'm sorry, 1974 going to the NBA. He was the first pick, and in for the Portland Trailblazers, he really turned this franchise around. Initially out of the gate, he didn't have the dominance that Wilt Chamberlain had. He didn't have the dominance that Bill Russell had. But the signs were there the first couple of seasons. His rookie season, he put up 12 points and 12 rebounds, almost 5 assists and 2.7 blocks. But they would not make a playoff appearance until 1977, which is Portland's only championship. It's kind of crazy that to this day, Portland has not won a championship. And they realistically should have had a dynasty, the Portland Trailblazers. The 1977 Blazers went 49 and 33. They were coached by Jack Ramsey. Um, they defeated the Nuggets, which were a good team in the late 70s. In the semifinals, they defeated the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. And in the NBA Finals, they were matched up with the Philadelphia 76ers, led by Julius Erving, who's now in the NBA. And this is one of the greatest finals, in my opinion. I liked watching those games on YouTube. The Sixers would win game one and two, and then Portland would come back winning four straight. They'd win game six, 109, 107, closing the series. Bill Walton would average 18.5 points, 19 rebounds, 5.2 assists, and 3.7 blocks. And they should have repeated because in 77, 78, the following season, they finished with 54 and 28. And you might be saying, okay, that's really great. Why didn't they repeat? Well, in that regular season, they started out really hot, and they were predicted like pretty much all of the sports media at the time was predicting that the Blazers are going to repeat. 58 games into the season before Bill Walton would get hurt, they were 50 and 10. That's how dominant they were. They defeated the Philadelphia 76ers in that game, 113 to 92. And unfortunately, Bill Walton would hurt his foot, and he was the MVP that season, I should point out. And he wouldn't have been able to win MVP today based on the 65 game rule. But the thing is, you look at how dominant he was in those games that he did play before he hurt his foot, and you know that he was the most valuable to his team. He deserved it. And unfortunately, he never played again for the Portland Trailblazers after that. Bill Walton kind of blamed Portland for how they handled his injury, and he would go through a dark point in his life trying to get back to health. And there's stuff I read about Bill Walton in his life that he suffered really bad depression, even contemplated suicide during his injuries. And it's he should have had a Portland Trailblazers dynasty. In all honesty, right? Uh, it should have been the '60s were the Celtics, the '50s were the Lakers, and the '70s should have been the Blazers. But it didn't happen. Um, he missed all of 78, 79, like I said, with his injury, never playing for Portland again. He would be traded to the San Diego Clippers. He'd play there for 14 games in 79, 80. But then he would miss 81, 82, come back and play 33 games in 83. 84, he played 55 games. 85, he played 67 games. And in 86, as I'm sure most people know, he was his healthiest season. He played 80 games, and he would play for the Boston Celtics. So the Celtics traded him to the Clippers for Cedric Maxwell and a first round draft pick. But here's the thing There's a story I heard that Bill Walton didn't pass his physical to play with the Celtics. And Red Auerbach, who, he wasn't the coach of the Celtics at the time. He was their general manager, he made the trades and whatnot. He was in the doctor's office when they were doing the physical on Bill Walton. And he told the doctors, "Look, he's going to play. You're going to clear him to play." And the doctors were like, "No way, we can't clear him to play." And I'll never forget this story as long as I live. Red Auerbach was lighting a cigar right there in the hospital. And he said to Bill Walton, he said, "Look, can you play?" To Bill Walton, he's like, "Answer me honestly. Do you think you have enough in you?" And, when you suffer so many injuries, right? When you keep getting hurt, you have that trauma in your mind that something bad's going to happen again. It's like when you have a car, right? And you have a lot of issues with it. Let's say the water pump goes bad. Let's say you have an issue with your transmission. Just one thing after another. Once it's fully fixed, you're going to have it in the back of your mind that something might bad happen again. And that's what Bill Russell was going through. Or, why is it Bill Russell? That's what Bill Walton was going through. He thought for a long time in the early 80s that his body failed him. And there's a story I heard. It was prior to the season starting for that 85-86 season with the Celtics. And he went to visit French Lick, Indiana, where Larry Bird was from. And him and Larry Bird were just hanging out where Bird came from. He saw the dirt road that Bird would use to play basketball on. And he picked up some of that dirt and he put it in a jar. And every time that Walton would have depression during that season, right? Every time he would have anxiety about getting hurt, as the story goes, he would take some of that dirt that he took from Larry Bird's childhood home, Dirt Road, and he would rub it on himself to remind himself that everything's going to be okay, that he's going to get through this. And he had his healthiest season. Like I said, he played 80 games. They won the championship. He won the Sixth Man of the Year. And to give you an idea about how injured Bill Walton was in his career, on Basketball Reference, they have Bill Walton's Hall of Fame probability at 2%. And the reason for that is, it's not perfect. It's a stat site. But usually, players who don't play a lot of games don't make the Hall of Fame, right? It's because of his collegiate career. It's because of how good he was when he was at his best. He was an MVP. He was a champion with the Trailblazers. He still had gas in the tank and was the sixth man of the year with the Celtics. And here's his total accolades, right? He was named to the 50th greatest anniversary team in 1997. He was named to the NBA's 75th anniversary team. Like I said, he was the MVP in 78, sixth man of the year in 86. He has two championships in 77 and 86. And he was all defensive first team in 77 and 78, all NBA first team in 78. And I think what my generation remembers him best is for his commentary. I remember in the early 2000s growing up, just, how funny he was, how entertaining he was uh, as a broadcaster. And, he actually suffered from stuttering when he was younger, and he was able to overcome as I'm stuttering. He was able to overcome the stuttering at the age of 28 with help of Hall of Fame broadcaster Marty Glickman after a lengthy conversation between the two at an event. And Walton said about his speech issues in his subsequent career, "I'm a shudderer. I never spoke to anybody. I lived most of my life by myself, but as soon as I got to the court, I was fine. But in life, being so self conscious, red hair, big nose, freckles, and goofy nerd looking face, and I can take it all, and I can't talk at all. I was incredibly shy and never said a word. Then, when I was 28, I learned how to speak. It's become my greatest accomplishment of my life, and everybody else's biggest nightmare, is what he said. After his retirement as a player, Walton became the basketball color commentator. Walton worked for CBS in 1990, NCAA on CBS 1991, and NBC from 1990 to 2002, the Los Angeles Clippers 1990 to 2002, and ABC ESPN from 2002 to 2009. After 19 years of working in broadcasting, he left ESPN in November 2009 as a result of back problems, which dated back to his injury he suffered in his college days at UCLA. Following surgery on his back, Walton returned to broadcasting as a part time commentator for the Sacramento Kings from 2010 to 11. And he would return in the 2012 season in July of 2012. On ESPN at the Pac 12 network announced that Bill Walton would return full time broadcasting as an analyst. And that's what my generation remembers it most for, is just his voice. Um, but he also hosted his own satellite radio show, One More Saturday Night, nicknamed after the Grateful Dead song of the same name. In 2001, Walton received an Emmy Award for Best Live Sports Television Broadcast in 2008. And he was let's talk a little more about his personal life. Um, his son played in the NBA, Luke, and his son would actually, if I'm not mistaken, was a coach for a while. Coached the Lakers, coached the Kings. But anyways, his son Luke became an NBA player, winning both in 2009 and 10 with the Lakers. And unfortunately, like I said, Bill Walton's no longer with us. Great Hall of Fame player. Uh, Everything I know about him was good. His social activism. He went from somebody who was shy, timid, afraid to speak, stuttered all the time, and he overcame that. And to me, that's something to celebrate. Is, you can be weak in an area and work at it. Think about it. 28 years old, you're learning how to speak and be confident in your speech, right? Um, yeah, it's unfortunate that we're losing so many Hall of Fame players. We lost Bill Russell a few years back. You know, we lost Sam Jones, Tom Heinsohn, Bill Walton now, of course. And what I one of my memories about Bill Walton was on the original Xbox back in the day on NBA 2K5. He was the commentator in it, and I played the living shit out of that game back in the day. So I have a lot of memories about his commentary in that game. So rest in peace, Bill Walton. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are down below, and thanks for watching.